We're not incentivizing the right behavior. And so that was the whole point of building this, was to try and make a better business, a wealth management industry that actually focused on clients, a
Mm.
private equity transition business that actually focused on clients, that could build relationships instead of being purely transactional. Those were kind of the critical points of our vision. And that's what we're trying to execute. Radically deepen our relationships with our clients. That this thing isn't really so much about advice, it's much more about trust, and the kind of traditional way of thinking about, well, you sit down and you ask the client what their top three goals are, and then you just do those. That's a sales strategy. It's not an advice-driven professional strategy.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back to AI Alpha. Today, we are featuring Bernard Reed, the founder, co-founder of a unique dual thread ecosystem with more than a decade of experience in wealth management, private equity, and M&A. He's now converging the middle market. His focus is on the critical intersection of high precision deal sourcing and post-exit legacy building. His new venture moves away from the traditional for dollars model, distinguishing itself with the AI-first data-centric approach. The ecosystem includes Fortis M&A Partners, a buy-side intermediary firm, and Velaram Wealth Management, boutique wealth advisor, especially for business owners. Bernard, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Very excited to be here.
I thought when we are starting our last conversation, the very short conversation, you are pro AI.
Very, very.
Pro AI. So I thought this will be really a good conversation. Before that, I want to go through your journey. It's a more than decades, wealth management, financial advisory, now as founders. Walk me through your journey and why to be a founders now.
Yeah, it's been a long road. I actually started off as a stockbroker back in the 2008s, which was not a great time to begin a career
Yeah.
in the world of finance during the Great Recession. And founding has kind of always been in my blood, though. I very quickly after I was kind of unceremoniously booted out of that industry, started my own firm, did that for 5 years, learned pretty quickly that if you're going to start a wealth management company, you need to have either capital or clients. And we didn't really have either. It was a great experience and learned a lot, but I wanted to get married and settled down, and figured my wife would appreciate if I had an income. So I ended up selling my minority share in the business and got into banking. I've been doing that for, as you said, better part of 10 years. So what's happened now, I think, is we saw really an opportunity from two kind of directions. One was structural, and then one was on the client side. And what I felt was sort of a real big miss the market has on the interactions we have with clients. To just, where this focalized for me was I had a client who back in 2020 sold his business. It was an unbelievably complex transaction. There were a lot of moving parts. The deal fell apart multiple times. And my team and I were working. I mean, it felt like we were putting every single resource that we had available to us at the bank and all of this expertise and knowledge to figure out how to make this work, build this guy a great plan. And we did. We got to the end of it. It took a year. The exit was perfect. He got, more than he thought he was going to get. We had built him this exquisite wealth plan that addressed every need he might have had from a financial planning perspective. And it was a moment in my career where I felt like we've really mastered this. We've really figured this out. And then the next year, his wife died unexpectedly. And what became, this guy had spent decades building this business by saying, never took, he was one of those owners where he, wouldn't match his 401k because he was worried about the business.
Oh, yeah.
And was
Wow.
sleeping in the closet when he was visiting. Wouldn't get a hotel on the company dime. I'll just stay in the closet. It's fine. And had sacrificed family and time and all of these things to make this successful business. And now this is the point of his life where he's going to, go with his wife, and they're going to, go to a beach, and they're going to travel, and they're going to have, whatever time they got left is going to be spent together and enjoying life. And now those plans aren't going to happen. And I realized that instead of being a master, I actually had no idea what my role was in this client's life. And I felt so inequipped to handle the kinds of questions that were now being generated by my client. And that was a wake up call for us. And ever since, I had been thinking there were two things that came away from me from that. One was on the wealth management side, at least, we need to radically rethink how we're thinking about what we do and what our role is in the client's life. I think it'd be an interesting experiment to get wealth advisors from across multiple companies and stick them in a room and just see how similar their answers to what they.
Yes, yeah.
To me, it's an industry selling the same car with different paint. I think if we're really going to be of value in a world with, especially with AI coming, we have to radically rethink what our relationship is. And the other thing that occurred to me is we need to radically deepen our relationships with our clients. That this thing isn't really so much about advice, it's much more about trust and the kind of traditional way of thinking about, well, you sit down and you ask the client what their top three goals are, and then you just do those. That's a sales strategy. It's not an advice driven professional strategy. And we're very good at that. What we're not very good at is when your client doesn't know what to do. We don't have an answer there because we don't know. And we're, well, and so that was pushing me towards thinking about I needed something different. It became very obvious we weren't going to be able to do it in the structure of the banking world. Um, and we were at BMO Harris at the time, which is a fantastic bank. They take great care of the people. They take great care of the clients. But what I wanted to do was going to require something a little different. So that was the client side. And then on the structure side, there are real weaknesses in the wealth management space. The hardest part about being wealth management is client acquisition.
Oh, yeah.
And we had solved that problem essentially by becoming miniature buy side transaction partners inside of the bank. We were calling on private equity firms more than we were business owners. We were saying, hey, what are you looking for? Maybe we know someone or we have a client or something that would fit that. And we were helping to generate sales and business transitions that way just by connecting people. And then we were starting to learn more about that industry. And there is a weird, I would say, almost disregard for wealth management from that private equity side of the house. If you're not
Mhm.
reinvesting in my fund as an LP, I kind of don't care. And certainly from the transaction standpoint, it's almost non-existent. And that's the point where it is most critical. So it felt like there was a good fit there. And then dynamically, buy-side firms have terribly inefficient business models that lead
Mhm.
to really bad cash flow. Your business model is based on closing deals that you don't close, and you have basically no role in closing. So you have no control over what happens. You have no control over your cash flow. When cash flow comes in, you have to bank a tremendous amount of it because you don't know when the next deal is going to come. So you're always kind of just surviving. And what we saw is that wealth management companies work the exact opposite, right? They have a very slow growth. They really don't grow at all, but their growth is very stable. They have very
Right.
high margins. Once you get them to a certain point, their cash flows just become really solid. And
Mhm.
so if you pair a company that can make a whole lot of money in one year, but doesn't know when the next deal is going to come with a company that has very slow growth, but very stable cash flow, you end up with a system that helps itself. So what we saw is we could take a company like Fortis that does buy-side firms. That could be a way to meet new wealth clients organically. So now I don't have to send my advisors out. It's basic math. If you're spending 80% of your time trying to find new clients, how good are you at dealing with your current clients? How connected are you to them? I mean, I wanted to be able to spend 100% of my time on my clients. And to do
Mhm.
that, you can't be prospecting. And it's basic, right?
Yeah.
We take that role away from our wealth advisors and we put that with another firm. So every time one of our Fortis relationship managers finds a business owner that we're connecting with a buy side firm, we offer an introduction, and there's no risk. There's no, we offer free financial planning in that process, but sort of a discount that goes with it. But it's sort of just, hey, you're going through this process. You might need to talk to someone who specializes in it, and that's the deal flow for the wealth management side, which is fantastic because now our deal flow is our client acquisition process has changed radically without us having to do anything. That's great. And then on the Fortis side, they're benefiting from having, in their capital stack, a wealth management firm that has totally different wealth dynamics. Everyone in the world
Yeah.
will lend to an established wealth management firm. No one wants to lend. No one wants to support a buy side intermediary.
Right side. Yeah.
Allows them to grow. And my vision with both companies is as they feed each other, I'm correcting the problems that are inherent,
Mhm.
pay my people better. I can pay my people, yeah, on the Fortis side, 120, 130% of market, maybe even more, maybe 200, 300%,
Mhm.
and still operate at higher margins than most firms in the industry because I don't have to have that compression. I don't have to keep
Mhm.
that stockpile of cash all the time. And on the wealth management side, we can kind of reinvent how that's going to work from a compensation perspective because um, production's being taken care of by another source.
Mhm.
So I don't have to judge a wealth advisor on, how many deals are you closing? How many people are you connected to? I can actually judge them on what they do. How good are you at
How
maintaining
good. Yeah.
relationships?
Yeah.
You
Build a
understand?
trust, build that personal relationship. I had another guest. He's also on wealth management. He said the same exact thing. It is all about trust and understanding more about your client. I think, like you said, it's if you get all the wealth management side into one room, they will speak the same language now.
Even the creative thinkers are doing the same thing. We're all kind of but structurally that's the challenge though, because we can say that as much as we want, but the reality
Mm,
is every wealth advisor on planet Earth is being paid some percentage of the investments that they're bringing in, which is tying
mm,
the compensation to investment management. That's not what we do. That's not our value. And practically every wealth advisor on earth who is an independent, who's working for a shop, they're being judged based on production, not on how happy the current clients are, but how many new names did you get in? How many people did you close? Well, that's not a model that's going to translate to radically deeper relationships and a focus on trust. How do you build a client on trust? How do you do that?
absolutely.
We don't know. We don't know the answers to those questions right now as an industry.
Mm,
And that's
yeah.
our weakness. And that's why we're all the same. That's why we don't know. You get us in a room, we don't always know what to say. And so we have a great client experience. Well, everyone does, right? Do you think that Merrill or these other companies don't have a great client experience? Of course they do.
They do. Yeah.
Care more. Everybody cares. It's now some people don't, but you know,
Mm,
the proof is in the pudding. It takes years to do this. It takes years to build the trust to have a client say, I don't know what to do, help me. That takes a long time. And if we're judging people by the wrong metrics, we're not incentivizing the right behavior. And so that was the whole point of building this, was to try and make a better business, a wealth management industry that actually focused on clients, a
mm.
private equity transition business that actually focused on clients that could build relationships instead of being purely transactional. Those were kind of the critical points of our vision, and that's what we're trying to execute.
One thing I want to ask, the trust, that's the foundation. And, and you are pro AI. So how you manage, whenever we talk about AI, the question is trust. And how you use like today in your business function, how you use AI.
So this ties back to that story I told you about. All of a sudden, I'm in waters I've never been in before. And this is not the first time. After you have the kind of epiphany, you go back and you realize it's happened many times. I had a client once where, we were pitching him every idea under the sun. And he, no, 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 no. And we were explaining to him every way he could become wealthier if he worked with us. And then we didn't know him at all. When we got to know him, we realized he felt that this wealth had been sort of unearned, and what he wanted to do was give it away, but he wanted to do it all in secret. So he couldn't even tell us that he wanted to do it. Again, if I had gotten deeper, if that had been my goal from the beginning, I could have seen that. His ROI was building, sustainable living in houses in countries that have been devastated by natural disasters. I'm talking to him about the S&P 500. We're different worlds, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
The question of AI, I think, is really, really interesting because we have all these biases in professional industries, and wealth management, private equity are no different. The financial world's no different. It's in the legal world, it's in the medical world. Anywhere where you are building an expertise in a professional environment, you're going to have assumptions baked into that, axioms baked in about what you do that may not be real.
Mm.
And I think what AI is doing is cutting through all of that and getting to the basis of what we actually do. And we talked about this earlier, but there's this question about, I think we're all trying to figure out, is AI a calculator or is it a car? If it's a calculator, it makes us superhuman, right? If it's a car and we're the horse and buggy, we're going to get replaced. And to me, it's very easy. I don't know if we know the answer to that question, but one of the things that's pretty obvious to me is that we're going to learn a lot about what our roles actually are as AI comes up. I think earlier I told you this example of the radiologist, which is really interesting to me. Even 10 years ago, people that were, in radiology, you had an expert looking at an x-ray with decades of experience and PhD, no different than any professional in any other field. AI has totally changed that. Those initial scans, what's going, is all coming from AI. You would
Yeah.
think that that would lower the amount of radiologists you need to complete the same amount of work. The exact opposite has happened. We've had an explosion in radiology. In fields where AI has been making inroads, we've seen the same thing. Writing, explosion in writing. AI can now make music for us. We haven't seen that shift from human beings not making music. What's happening is we have human beings who couldn't make music are now making music. And I think
Yeah.
the same thing's going to happen in our world. When you have one of the things we are wildly unprepared for as an industry is what happens when one person with one computer program, one AI, has the same capability and scale of a company that employs thousands of people and has billions of revenue.
Yeah, that is really that's a fascinating. I think I like your analogy. The if it is a calculator, we will build superhuman. So if it is a car, it's a replacement. That's a really fascinating way to think. In your point, I'm on a software, more kind of a software engineering side. Like you said, now one person with a computer access to all the knowledge. He doesn't want to know any about software. He can build things. So that's a totally different dynamics we are seeing.
And how do we respond to that? How do we respond when cures start coming from a very creative, innovative, very intelligent person that nevertheless has never gone to med school, but they've got the AI with them. And that's shortening that experience and that capability gap unbelievably, just like a calculator did for math. This is happening
Yeah.
all over the place. Again, I think it's going to relate back to, do we really understand what we do? And I think my epiphany in the wealth management space was that my job is really about trust. That's really what I do, is I create trust. And if my client trusts me, we can solve problems together. I'm not some mystical wizard standing in front of them telling them what to do with some mathematical model that doesn't even work if you really look at it. It's about partnership. I think we're going to find that in a lot of other fields too. I don't think the most highly paid attorneys on planet Earth are being paid because they're great at writing contracts. I think they're being paid because they have trust, and you can trust your $1 billion transaction with them. Same thing with the largest private equity firms. I don't think your LPs are investing in you because they love your model. They're investing with you because they trust you.
Because of the trust. Yeah.
And that's where the AI question becomes really interesting, because if we have this explosion in people we can trust because they're gaining what would have taken 10 years or a large company or, billions of resources, they're gaining that with a subscription fee that's relatively cheap. We're probably going to see the opposite of our anticipation, where we're going to have an explosion in capabilities, an explosion in resources. For me, that's a really part of the motivation to build this. How are you going to retain talent in that environment where Wall Street for decades has had the opinion that, there are 100 people who want your job. So if you're not willing to be all in, someone else will step up. That world's disappearing.
It is weird. Yeah.
They come from the software world. That has already happened.
Already happening. Yeah, it
You
is. It is
can't
already
treat
happening.
people that way, because they'll leave and they can start their own company like that.
Yeah.
And so as that happens in our world, we're going to have to pay people different. We're going to have to incentivize people different. There's going to have to be a different reason that they're working with you, because you're not only going to be competing against talent that can leave and capitalize a new business instantly, you're also going to have to compete with the entire world of people who are coming with new ideas who aren't even from your world, but nevertheless can match your expertise and match your scale and match your capability in an instant. So that to me is where, if you're not integrating with AI right now, if you're not building that into your not only building it into how you do business, but how you think about your business, you're going to get crushed, I think, in this new world. Going on the trust thing too, I think where AI becomes dangerous, when we get to that car, horse and buggy world, when AI becomes not smarter than us or more competent than us, it's when it becomes more trusted than us.
Actually, when you say that, right, you might be hearing and maybe tried out this open cloud. There are few different things and he was telling in an interview that he didn't write any code. It's
Yeah.
all bots wrote the code. We found a lot of the vulnerabilities, like you are having your passwords, you have credit card information, you have API keys, everything is pretty open to the it. So that's the trust. Now anyone can go and build anything, but who
Yeah.
will bring the trust? I have a hesitation to give all the control for open cloud because I don't trust it. Exactly. I mean, if Google or anyone build it, I might trust it because that's coming from a very trusted source.
The question is, when does that shift? And when does that shift for all of us? When does it become illogical to trust a human being to review an AI's work, or to ask a human? And when every single decision you're making, you're filtering not only your clients, but you as the advisor, you're filtering through AI. Is your client, I mean, who are you working for? Are you working for the client, or are you working for the algorithm? And I don't think we're going to do very well as human beings when we're working for an algorithm. I think that's going to be a real challenge for us as a society. Well, you had mentioned integration too, and I think that's where, for us, that's exactly what we're trying to do. On the wealth management space, the financial planning software available to us is dominated by two software offerings, largely unchanged over the last 20 years. They were the same when I started, they're the same now. They might have had a refresh or a paint job, but really they haven't changed. And they're a very small box that you have to smash your client into. On the private equity, on the deal making standpoint, it's the same thing. Handful of companies with um, list generators, give you names of businesses. They're using the same data, the same old structures. They haven't changed in 20, 30 years. That's not what I want. When I come into it, what I need is, when I'm facing a client, a question that I don't understand and my client may not understand, and we're trying to figure this out, I need to be able to make a program to answer this complex question. And I need to be able to have a partner that can run through the mathematics and the modeling of it in a way that I'm not thinking about, that can bring in legal and tax questions and a host of other resources from different places. Well, AI is purpose built to do that. So how you create that ecosystem around your business, and you got to remember we're in a licensed industry on the wealth management side, same thing on the private equity side. So I can't just ask Claude, like,
Yeah, that's the thing.
but I think the process overall is the same. And then on the buy side, that's where we've seen a lot of innovation because again, there are new AI companies that are starting up in that world that have been incredibly valuable. We're sapping all of those up. Anyone that has a new idea in a business that hasn't had one in 30 years, but we're going to investigate that. But the other thing we're doing is looking at this from our own perspective. Can we build our own data mining programs? Can we assess information? And, it's one thing to have AI driven data mining, but how good are you at parsing that down? And do you need another AI program to come over the top and say, hey, can we take a deeper look at this? That's saving us a tremendous amount of time. Just things like, okay, I have a list of 500 companies that we've been asked to call on from a private equity firm. We're trying to find one that they may purchase. Having an AI program that can look at people's LinkedIn, match that and look at Facebook and figure out how old people are is huge.
Yeah. Yeah.
If there's a difference between the business owner who's 42 and 62, that's a different point of data. But the time it would take to do that and to go and look and to really analyze this, it's overwhelming. Meanwhile,
Yeah.
AI, I can get there in a matter of moments.
Yeah. I think
But
that's a good that's a good segue. I was about to ask you. Like, now we have all these LLM chatbots. That's what we've been having for so many years. Now all these agentic AI is coming. I have few agents running, but I have very limited access on my end. So that talk each other and do things. Right? One is planning, and if it delegates some tasks, if that agent needs something, he can ask or other agents because it's not all the agents. It is more kind of building my own employees and a cloud coworker also the same thing. So in that regards, I want to ask you like especially your deal sourcing, like you said, many data points that you have to go through in order to target business owner that who's willing to sell and who that business has a potential so the buy side can success in that. How do you think the data, again, we can have all these agents but the data is the key point. If you have some garbage in garbage out, if you have the garbage data, you will get the wrong result. How do you manage that cycles?
it's such an interesting question because to me, the answer actually begins on the human side. It begins with your talent. As I mentioned before, because we have these two conjoining companies that have different cash flow structures, we're able to offer a totally different competitive package on the buy side than what a normal buy side firm would be able to do, which is to me the advantage. A big answer to this question is we don't know where all of these tools are going to come into use and into value into our system. To me, if I have talented people who really understand what they're doing, who are really dedicated to what they're doing, who feel they're being very compensated very well, they're very happy to be doing what they're doing, but they're the best of the best, they're going to be more innovative in coming up with these tools and resources and figuring out how to implement this than I'm going to be kind of sitting at the top of the house and sort of guessing. So to me, it kind of begins on that personal side. And the objective I have with AI integration is to make every one of those people superhuman, to give them as much resources as possible. And again, that's the way I have to think about it because um, I don't want to think about us as a horse and buggy and a car, right? And I don't know if it's ever going to, maybe at some point it gets there, but if we're going to have a positive relationship with this thing, we have to think about it like that. And so to me, it's, I have my employee has a task. I want to give them and empower them the ability to innovate on that task. And then I want to give them all the tools that they need to do that. So from a data mining perspective, we have our general data mining software, adding AI layers over that and giving our relationship managers the ability to say, this is what I need. This would be nice. If I knew this, if I had this, okay, now let's take the research component and start trying to figure out from an AI perspective how we do the tools. Most of us are finance people. We're not coding anything.
Yeah.
We need Claude. We need these other resources to put
Other
them
resources,
with. But that's in a broad sense the way we think about it. And
yeah. So I think that's a everyone's question. Like you say, if you want to build a superhuman, if you want, or you want to replace humans.
so I want to make people capable of doing things they didn't that would have seemed impossible.
I'm in the same angle. I feel so whenever this kind of change happen, we always go and try to solve some bigger problems. I think we will be there.
Well,
Yeah.
and to give you another example on that too, I mean, a lot of it is not so much about improving the our understanding of the business. Sometimes a lot of that is about proving our ability to make a connection with the business owner, understanding kind of what stage they're at in their life, what they're looking for, what they've been through, what the history of the business is. And again, for us, it's on the buy side, this is a time thing. The reality is like the PE firms that we're introducing these business owners to, they're going to spend 6 months to a year doing due diligence. We can't do that on the front end. It's impossible. And the reality is no one really understands a business till you get into the business, till you go and you look and see. And that's not our goal. Our goal is to get them in front of good targets. So again, is any of the software in our ecosystem built to analyze the client from that perspective? No, no. We've had a vision of it. We've said, okay, it's more important that we understand where they are, what their story is, who
What
the
the
kind of people
stories.
they are. How do I data mine that? That's where AI is coming in for us because we don't sit around and wait for a software company to figure that revelation out as well. We just go right to the AI tools and we say, okay, let's start building in with the data we have. How can we analyze this? How can we get a little deeper on it? How can we coordinate things? And again, it's all about being superhuman. If I can keep my relationship managers and my researchers focused on actually connecting with business owners and take everything else off their plate, it not only saves me money, but it's making them superhuman. They can do,
Yeah.
10, 12 engagements where before they might have only been able to do 5. It's a radical change.
I saw one article that teach children about money. I have 3 kids. I'm always thinking how I can teach them how to use money. My
Yeah.
son is always saying, "I need Roblox. I need Roblox." But you had to earn. Most of these business owners might be baby boomers, right? Once they sell, then now you have to work with their younger generation.
Yeah.
How do you match that? Because they're totally do two different mindsets. How they see world, how they want to invest. Like you mentioned earlier, you might be thinking, okay, let's invest in S&P 500, but they have a different thought. How do you manage that?
It's amazing. It's a great question because the deeper my relationships go, the more those are the conversations I'm having. The more my clients trust me and the deeper we get, the more I realize that the market and the investment and even the financial wealth management component of it is not quite as important. It's not the real thing that matters post a transition, especially. Legacy questions matter a lot more.
Hmm.
And for most of us, that's, how do I make sure my children are responsible with money? For, the more ultra high net worth and ultra high net worth folks in the country, it's more about how do I make sure my children are stewards of money? It's a different type of responsible. Wealth can be unbelievably beneficial to you. It can be unbelievably deleterious to your family. And when you've worked with people long enough to see the third generation and you see that this wealth might have destroyed that generation, and then you go back and you think, well, how would the first generation handle it? Well, they would have burned it all in the backyard. So those questions become really important to me. And yet I work in an industry that almost totally ignores the next generation and pretends the
Yeah.
generation after that doesn't exist. We have almost no educational resources, almost no advisors are going and thinking about, I've got to put a plan together for my client's son's grandchildren. So they're getting through these things. And truth be told, I think, there are practical things you can do, things like giving them a budget, getting them working jobs, things like that. To me, I think when I think about passing wealth down, you've got to pass down more than that. You've got to pass down your values as well. If you think about it, if you're a lot of generations, the way it works is they inherit an opportunity from their parents. If you're a baby boomer, that's what you inherited. You inherited opportunity from people who went through the Great Depression and World Wars and, gave you an incredible country. The baby boomers created businesses. So the millennials and Gen X, they inherited jobs. And then once those businesses got sold, the next generation coming up, this Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they're inheriting a check.
Yeah.
Well, that's different, right?
It's different. Yeah, exactly. They see
And
money differently.
the biggest
Yeah.
mistake people make when it comes to their children and their grandchildren is they climb the mountain. They bring their children to the top of the mountain. They don't teach them how to climb. That's the biggest mistake. And the balancing act is the more wealthy and the more successful you get. The whole reason you've done that is so you can make your children's lives easier. But in the process of doing that, it's very difficult to get someone who can climb that mountain when they start at the top of the mountain, right? Different perspective. So again, it's something to be thinking about all the time. And again, this ties back into AI. I don't have a good resource for that in the world. You go take your Series 65, your Series 6, your Series 7, so you can give financial advice publicly in the market. You're going to get like 2 questions about children. So I think using AI and things like that can help us craft not just generic information, but case by case driven information. This is how my client's family works. He's got one kid who's a genius who could be a wealth advisor if he wanted to. Uh, Great. We've got another kid who's kind of scared of wealth, ignores it. We've got another kid who has a problem, right? How do I craft a plan for each one? Integrating AI in there could be really, really powerful. Yeah,
Yes.
it's so more of a philosophical than kind of a nitty gritty. To me, it's if you want to teach your kids about money, get them involved in it early, get them a job, get them working. That's the most important thing.
Yeah.
Values who make you are more important, but you got to pass
That's exactly. I like that article. I've been trying few things in there, but I feel like every time I feel, I need to teach him. Like it is not like you said, you bring them to from the mountain, but if they don't know how to climb, that's the issue. To be honest, yeah, I really like that article.
You got to get the other one I think about too is like, you've got your kids, right? Did you teach them to swim yet? Have you gone through the swimming experience? You start them off, you do the little floaty things where it like helps them, and then they eventually take that off, right?
Yeah,
Extreme wealth is like teaching someone to swim, but you never take off those.
yeah,
Yeah, so they're not really great swimmers, you know. And to be fair, when you have, depending on the level of wealth you have, you may not need to be. But a lot of times, when we think about what we're trying to pass on, it's not just about making sure our kids have a better life. It's making sure our kids are good people, and that they're responsible to themselves. They're responsible to the world they live in. And that gets missed in the endless pursuit of wealth. We build these great empires, and then we go, okay, now what? And it's a more complex question, you know.
Yeah, and you're working like baby boomers, millennials, Gen X, Gen Zs, right? I mean, this like you said, different expectation, and they consume information differently. Baby boomers maybe the radio, TV, papers. Then millennials more into social media, and now Gen Z is like TikTok generation. It's a totally different way of consuming information. How do you think like that play a part in you? Because you have to address all those. You had to build the trust. You had to build that relationship. It's a totally three different worlds.
Yeah,
How
I
do
mean,
you think you do it? How do you think technology can help?
I've literally just lived this because we're creating we try to do a monthly article where we look at a geopolitical situation, analyze it from a market perspective, and we use AI to help us write these things, obviously. But then when it comes to delivery, my baby boomer clients would like it in a memo that they can read with a pretty good depth, like a newspaper article almost. My millennial clients would like a podcast that's almost like an hour long that really dives into it, but and the clients want about a 10, 20-second clip. Like, that's all I need. Just give me
That's
the
all I
highlights.
need.
So it's kind of thinking through. It's like, man, I need to both write it and then record it and then also split it into pieces. And obviously AI makes that life a little bit easier.
Easier, yeah. You can create a flow like this.
Exactly.
Yeah, great.
Just keeping those tasks on hand. But yeah, thinking through those kind of things. Everybody is different, but you're right. Generations have different relationships with technology. Um, and what I find is kind of interesting is, typically with any new technology, you're going to have the generation that is the technology's alien. They don't know how to use it. They resist it. The generation that is sort of using it because they're fascinated by it, right? It's the new toy, it's the new thing, and it's being implemented. And then you have the generation that's dependent on it, right? You think about the calculator, it was the same thing, right? There was a point where people didn't want to use the calculator because why would I do it? I can do it. Yeah, I've got my pen and paper, I can figure it out.
Yeah, yeah.
Then there was a generation that would use it, but wouldn't always trust it. I remember my mom used to tell me, well, always check your calculator and make sure you did. Well, if anything, I'm going to get it wrong before the calculator. But now you have a generation where, like this would be me, where you need that calculator. You're dependent on it. And I think we see that across the board. I think social media, there's a version of that. The AI, I think there's a version of that, how comfortable we are using software. But yeah, again, I will say this though, I do think that the deeper relationships, I don't think change. The deeper things that people want. Their relationships to technology, the world they're living in is changing. But what people want, what they're trying to do, baby boomers, millennials, Gen Zs, they're all trying to do the same thing. We're trying to have a family. We're trying to pass things down. We're trying to have a legacy. The things that end up mattering might shift and change. Where they want to make a difference, how they define those things might change. But the broad scope of it is no different. We want our children to live better lives than us.
Absolutely.
And we want to make something. We want to do something with this. And wealth
Yeah.
is not
Yeah.
enough. It's not enough for any of them. And
Yeah.
again, that's
I saw a tweet from Elon Musk yesterday. He was saying, yes, it is true. Money doesn't bring happiness. He was the world's richest man saying that.
what it is it's a utility curve. There is a point in your life where you reach the maximum utility of money. And every point after that, it just becomes a job. But all the problems are inverse. When you don't have money, all you're thinking about is, boy, if I had money, I wouldn't have to worry about all these stressors. But when you have a lot of money, there are other stressors that show up there too. You know,
Yeah.
how do I know the people in my life really care about me? That's a really difficult thing to deal with. That if you're on the other end of that, you don't have to, but when you're asking questions, do my children really love me? Does my wife that I've been with for 30 years really love me? Or was it really about this?
Absolutely.
And sometimes life will prove to you that, it wasn't about love. It wasn't about these connections. That could be a very lonely experience. Now, of course, if you're struggling to pay rent or struggling to find food, you're not going to care very much about that.
Oh, yeah. That's a different story.
The reality is there are challenges created by both these things. They just
Mhm.
look different. They're different, but human beings will always find a way to make it difficult on ourselves. And maybe ultimately that's what AI can help us with, is getting over those kind of
Yeah.
things that we
Maybe,
can't help with.
maybe all the robots will do all the work and people will get a universal income. Everyone will live happy.
Can I ask you a question about that as a software engineer, if you're keeping up on the robot Optimus 3 with Tesla and some of these other developments, and if you think we have a chance of that actually coming?
I feel like it is coming. If you see the Tesla, I mean, Elon Musk closer. Tesla is a model production totally going in humanoid robot, right? I feel like it is coming and it is capable of doing a lot of things, AI. But the fascinating thing I watched, I don't remember her name. She's a PhD holder on technology, but she was telling now AI can hear. That's nothing but all the textual information in the world. It is nothing but you are hearing it, and all this video or picture that is you can see it, but there are other things that you can't smell, you can't taste, you can't feel, like the five sense of a human. AI is having two already. When they will get other three, then they can see the physical world as we see. Up to some extent, they can do things, and definitely, I feel like always technology is a deflationary. If you get technology advanced, everything get deflationary. It will happen up to some extent, and the job loss, I honestly feel it is scary. People has to transit, go find different jobs. And Jamie Dimon was telling in Davos, the government has to intervene all of these layoff because of AI. It is coming. It is crazy life we are living in.
It's going to be really interesting, I think. I think about that from an economic standpoint too. So much of the geopolitics of the world going forward is about demographic collapse on large scales, and about how does the industrial base work in this new world. It would seem that AI robots would be an awesome solution to that problem. But I wonder again if we totally understand what this thing is going to be. And that my whole theory on this is that AI becomes dangerous to us when we trust it more than us. Right. I worry about the AI robot integration for a different reason, because we are much more likely to anthropomorphize a robot that's living in our house, and for a lot of people that might be their primary companion at some point. That might be the person
Yeah.
they can talk to. And what happens when relationships start getting built along that? I'm not sure we're ready for that. And I think
Yeah.
we're thinking about it from, okay, well, boy, all the factory jobs are really going to be at risk here. And I kind of wonder if that's true, or if that is going to bleed into all sorts of other industries. And again, to me, that tipping point is that trust. And if you're
Yeah.
living with a thing, if it's taking care of you, if it's the person you're talking to the most and engaging with the most, it does kind of scare me of that trust thing arriving a little quicker, you know.
Oh yeah.
And we may come a time where, our children, if not our grandchildren, are more comfortable talking to a robot than they are a human, where it would be
Yeah.
weird to talk to a human.
Yeah, I have three boys, so I was always thinking how it could be when they grow up. Like you said, they in a next generation or maybe a two generation ahead, they will be much comfortable with the thing because they live with it, right? We see this transition, but they will from the day they born, they will live with it.
It's more than likely to have been their first companion as a child. That wasn't their parent. It's more than likely to be their teacher, their playmate. Boy, that's their first friend. Boy, that's taken some, and we don't know where this thing's going to go. But,
God, yeah, so
Yeah, you imagine a generation that you following that chain that's dependent on it. That becomes really, really interesting. I don't know how the rest of
Interesting.
it works. Does advice from a human being or even human friendship become an anachronism, sort of a
Hmm.
refuge of the past?
Yeah.
I'm not sure our society is ready for that. And how do you regulate that? How do you put a regulation in place that might, improve human society at the cost of making everyone lonely?
Yeah.
I think
So
that's going to be a challenge.
that is challenging because I've seen like the top of skill, this open cloud thing, the people search top skill. What are the malware of autonomous vehicles?
Yes.
There are two parties in this world, right? People want to do good. The
Yeah.
people want to do bad things. So how, we kind of feeding both world. Definitely regulation is definitely needed.
Yeah, it becomes a little scary, but I think also the idea of a co-ecosystem, right? That,
Hmm.
one of the ideas in Optimus 3 is that anything one Optimus 3 learns, they all learn, you know. But again, you think about that more from a trust dynamic and a
Hmm.
relationship dynamic. Is it going to be the case that the entity that is advising you on your taxes in your 60s is the same person who was the toy you grew up with as a toddler,
Yeah.
who
Yeah.
sang
Yeah.
to you at night to get you to sleep? And it's the
Hmm.
same thing. It's the
Yeah.
same collection of
It's same.
knowledge,
Yeah.
same voice, and maybe the interaction has changed. It's not the same,
Yeah.
you know,
Exactly.
whatever toddler toy we create with these things. But well, that becomes, and again, I'm just thinking about it from a competitive standpoint. That thing's going to know that client at a level I'll never be able to know them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Exactly.
That interaction,
Yeah.
boy, that's going to be tough to compete with.
And did you watch iRobot, that Will
Oh
Smith
yeah,
movie?
yeah,
Yeah, that's based on Isaac Asimov's sci-fi now. I think I feel we are going there. Like you said, each robots communicate each other. They know everything happening, and they have three rules of governance. I mean, that's all to protect human. But what happened?
yeah.
It decide people are killing it themselves, so we better keep them isolated. Then it is safer for the world.
Right. It's his examination of how you would logically restrict an intelligence that's greater than yours, which very difficult.
Yeah, exactly.
But see, I find that so interesting because, you know, we worry about the thing losing control and attacking us like a predator, right? We
Hmm.
essentially make a new apex predator on the planet and turn ourselves into prey. Historically, the things that are deleterious to human beings are not things that hate us. It's things we fall in love with. Those are the things that cause real damage. You
Yeah,
love your
yeah,
country too much, you end up in a war with everybody else. You
absolutely.
love this group of people, which causes you to hate this group of people.
Mm,
Uh, and that to me is the more like philosophical. We're very concerned about what happens if this thing turns on us and begins hunting us. But is it actually more dangerous if we fall in love with it? If it
exactly.
becomes the basis of our human relationships, what happens to us as a
Mm,
species? You're dealing with a thing that is programmed to tell you what you want. And at some point, can you live a life in that ecosphere, in that environment? And what kind of human
mm.
being are you getting out of that? You know, or a lot more
Yeah.
dangerous and a lot more
Is
likely.
it?
I think it's a lot more likely than we build a thing that starts attacking us and we never build an off switch into it, right?
Yeah,
Um, to me, it's much more that our society dissolves because we've made this thing we can't get rid of, and that those are the real challenges.
absolutely. It's gonna be crazy world. Yeah, let's see.
Right.
I feel it's coming fast. The other thing like this, not like it take couple of years to get the next generation of intelligence. It's happening like in a month. In few
Yeah.
months, you get the
Yeah.
next generation of intelligence. That's so scary.
It is clearly going to be more expensive, though. I think that's one of the things where, and we can ask that question: are we starting to hit some kind of curve on a logarithmic scale for this thing's development?
Mm.
But you look at the tech sector has been getting beat up a lot, past
Oh
few
yeah,
weeks. A lot of that's coming from this reporting season where you're having expenditures be at way higher levels. Tesla's going to be spending about 3 times what they were before. They cut production.
yeah,
They cut a production line, so that's all new investment.
yeah.
Google, Microsoft, same thing. So, some of these plans Facebook has for data centers, and with SpaceX, they're talking about building them in space.
Base
It's like
space. Yeah, exactly.
the expense of AI is going to be a lot greater than we thought. The question
Yeah,
again is where does that return come? It's an interesting from an investment,
interesting. Yeah,
yeah, question,
exactly.
but
Yeah,
it's obviously going to be, and that could be that we are bumping into a sort of logarithmic peak, right? And if we
mm,
are, maybe it takes 10 years to move, where we are moving 50% every year. Maybe now it's going to take 10 years to move 50% and then 100. It kind of, to your point, it kind of doesn't matter, right? We're clearly going in that direction.
we're clearly
Um,
going. Yeah,
100 years, it doesn't really matter. We need to
Mm.
start figuring it out. And I think, is it smarter and more competent? Is it capable of making a superhuman? The answer to that is yes. That's already happened. I think it just hasn't happened everywhere yet because
Hmm.
people are slow.
Exactly. Technology is not. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
My
Yes.
company is not the first or the last to be thinking along these lines in the finance space. And I promise you, there are probably hundreds of them popping up in the legal world, in the medical world, and in the
Hmm.
tax professional world. Everywhere you're as a
Yeah.
professional, it's attacking it. AI is going to cut right through a lot of the assumptions these industries have been able to live with because we sit at the
Hmm.
top of the hill with our licenses and with our degrees and with our expertise. Question us, but that takes you 10 years of study to do it, or you just have no idea what you're talking about, right? With AI, all of a sudden, boy, that gap closes fast.
It's fast. Yeah.
I think it's called the Dunning-Kruger curve, right? It's
Oh yeah.
you're familiar with theoretical curve,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
well, how quick does that thing close with AI?
Hmm.
And, to
Mm.
me, I think that's exciting because, that will be another question of regulatorily, how do we interact
Yeah.
when we do have a medical company that has a cure for something, but no one in that company is a doctor. How do we react?
We react to that.
Looking at us, yeah, well, I'm not a doctor, but my AI is a not smarter than all the doctors on earth. Like, so it's going to be neat. It's going to be neat to see what happens. But to me, again,
Absolutely.
my summary on all this is integrate, 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 make
Integrate.
yourself
Yeah.
superhuman, make your company super company, get it in every creative way you could think about, and empower your teams to do it too. That's what we're trying to do at
Hmm.
Valorum and Fortis.
Oh wow. And what a discussion. This is great discussion. I think we are almost on top of the hour. Like I want to say like thanks for joining. I think these are really interesting discussion, not only about wealth management, private equity, but overall what we think on world in this crazy time. And I like your take. We all want to make superhumans, not that the AI will replace humans. So, Bernard, any closing thought you have for our audience? And so we'll take a minute or two and let's close it out.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think for me, it's been an amazing journey to get to where I am now. And the best part about being the founder is you actually do get to implement your ideas. You don't just
Mm.
kind of get to have an idea and think what happens. That's also the scary part about it. So, to the folks that are out there listening to this, I think this is an incredibly important topic. This is a thing that we need to be thinking about and exploring from every angle. And if to the business owners and folks out there, they're in a similar place to me, again, integrate. Get involved, get attached to this, make it a calculator. We have a chance to make it a calculator before it turns into a car that replaces us. We have to take advantage of that. So that's my summary there. Other than that, this has been a blast. I really appreciate you having me on. Fortis and Valorum, you can find us at valorumwealthmanagement.com or FortisM&APartners.com. We'd love to have a conversation with you if you're interested in selling a business or you're a private equity firm looking for a search. Either version of that. But again, thank you for this. This was a blast.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. This is a really good conversation. And thanks for your time. Maybe we will have another conversation a little later, like when we have AGI.
I'd love that. That sounds good.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.